Well done.
The other night I was jamming on some games with a good friend of mine, and we came away with a bit of a brainstorming session. The discussion we're going to have today very much stems from that brainstorming session. This is a lot of just us shooting out theories, things we'd like to see in some of our favorite games. And my friend Jack and I have been thinking quite a bit about the whole PvP VE thing, that hybrid PvP PvE modes that we're starting to see pop up in a lot of standalone experiences, but also recently in a lot of dedicated experiences as separate modes within a greater gameplay experience. The biggest one obviously being Gambit coming to Destiny with the Forsaken DLC. Now there are of course other games that have dabbled in the concept of player versus environment elements within their PvP, and Titanfall 2, the Titanfall franchise, hopefully going forward as well, is one of the biggest contenders for that sort of hybrid implementation. Here's the thing though, when we look at a mode like Attrition, we look at a mode like Bounty Hunt, these are games that I don't think fully dedicate to the concept of PvE being a portion of that gameplay experience. Now in the case of Attrition, I think that's okay. I think Attrition works as this hybrid team deathmatch mode where you can farm AI if you want to. I've spoken to the strengths of Attrition as a really great pick up and play mode in the past. I like it. I think it allows a lot of people to get into the game and even do well, support their team if they're not necessarily straight up slayers. However, Bounty Hunt, a mode that was brand new to Titanfall 2, I think saw a lot of issues because of that sort of hybrid meshing that the game gets. When we look at a mode like Gambit, I see a lot of possible inspirations for a future Bounty Hunt experience in Titanfall 3, what have you. Gambit works like this, and this is why I think it's going to work so well, and why I think so many people who have gotten to play it really enjoy it. You actually exist in your own separate instances during the PvE phases of the game. So you and your team are taking on waves of enemies within the Gambit arena, looking to collect motes, which you can then cash in to activate blockers for the other team, as well as certain boss enemies to make their experience a little bit more difficult. When your team deploys a certain number of motes, you unlock a portal that allows one of your players to go to the other side to harass, attack, and hopefully tear away some of the motes from the enemy team. That's where the PvP portion comes in, and it's extremely curated to have the game actually have a larger focus around PvE with a minimal focus around PvP, but one that absolutely still matters. It's this idea of a teamwork, cooperative-driven race that can be interrupted by some of your best PvP players. I absolutely love the idea of it, and when I think of things that I wanted Destiny 2 to do in the multiplayer and the player versus player space, Gambit is one of them. Give us new, interesting, hybrid ideas. Don't just throw team deathmatch, control, domination, capture the flag at us for the 1000th time. When these new games are releasing, and they have these single player or co-op or PvE driven components, it's nice to see the PvP side of things take risks, try and push forward with new ideas that can drive the community to be interested in something that simply hasn't been done before, and possibly on a grander scale than they otherwise would be if it was just another team deathmatch focused mode. That's what I think Bounty Hunt needs if it's going to exist in the future of Titanfall with potentially Titanfall 3. It's a mode that I really like the idea of, but the reality is it can just be meta'd. It can be played within the game, and that's what people do. It's a mode that doesn't work well because there's a huge portion of people who don't really know what's going on, who don't understand how they score points directly, who don't understand how they have to bank, and then there's the people who totally understand the game, and again, they game the game. They just farm players, they camp at bank spots, and it's not to say that I've ever had a huge issue with that, but it clearly wasn't something that worked out in the long term, and it drove a lot of players away from what I thought could have been one of the best feature modes for Titanfall 3. I think feature modes, especially when a new game launches, can be very important. When we take a look back at Bad Company and its introduction of Rush and how it kind of evolved the landscape of Battlefield, suddenly that was the mode everyone was playing, and I think it worked really well. A lot of people love Bad Company 2, so those key modes I think are very important, and I always thought that Bounty Hunt was going to be that mode. I think Respawn thought it could have been that mode, but again, it needs a bit more curation. So here's my theory. Here's the sort of vision that I came up with for how I think Bounty Hunt could really capture that PvE, PvP hybrid nature that Titanfall 2 is just, it's loaded with it, right? But it just never grasps, never locks onto it fully. So imagine we have a similar experience to Gambit. Two teams are in separate instances, perhaps a map that is actually split down the middle. Maybe these maps are symmetrically designed for this purpose, and there's some sort of a holographic wall between the two teams that doesn't allow either team to breach the side. Instead, they're focused on hunting down their bounty targets. So you've got grunts, you've got specters, you've got all of your traditional AI fare in Titanfall, and occasionally there will be the waves that we see in Bounty Hunt currently where we get full-on Titans that drop. So a lot of the mechanics remain the same. You know, you still get to call in your Titan, you get to boost that up. When do I want to call in my Titan? When do I want to help my team take down these AI Titans? You're essentially farming these points, farming cash. This is still a game about cash, just like Bounty Hunt always was. Now, there could be certain points within the match where things kind of change. And you're going to have a runner on your team and a runner on the enemy team who suddenly have to be transported into a gauntlet. Let's make use of Titanfall's movement mechanics here. And let's actually have a gauntlet in the game in which players have to run that gauntlet to get to the end to turn in their cash. Now, while that's all happening, the wall is now breaking down in the middle of the map, and the two teams are colliding in a player versus player engagement. The more individuals in your team who die, the more money is subtracted from your team's cash in. And the same goes for the other team. So it's essentially this race to eliminate as many members of the other team to cut down on how much they actually earn to destroy a percentage of their currency, and vice versa. It's not a perfect idea, but it's just one of the ones we caught up with of many. There was a lot of different ideas around how could this work, how does this function. I think this is very much an instance where we're just starting to see a lot of modes like this make their way into the game, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with things being copied or directly inspired. You know, you look at Gambit and that format just sounds like it works really well. It's kind of like, where else can that work? In the same way that Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag and Domination have been shoehorned into just about every other experience ever in the first-person shooter market, why can't something like Gambit be transplanted into other experiences to really focus on that PvE, PvP hybrid experience? I mean, Titanfall 2 was a game ripe for that. The Titanfall franchise is, I think, a game ripe for that. So I guess at the end of the day, the big discussion here isn't so much, hey, that's my idea for Bounty Hunt, but the plain and simple fact that I'd love to see Respawn, with the future of the franchise, really look at building out a stronger PvE-focused experience with a dash of PvP to really create something that is far more accessible for the masses, but still incredibly enjoyable, and that still has a relatively high skill ceiling. Because that's kind of what I see when I look at Gambit. I see something that welcomes a lot of individuals into the PvP realm that typically wouldn't bother existing there. I mean, I've got good friends who, yeah, we play Overwatch, we played Rainbow Six Siege, you know, we played a lot of competitive PvP stuff. We love Gears of War to death. It's something we grew up with. We like hardcore, straight up PvP driven experiences, but sometimes you just want something new, and sometimes you play a game because you love its PvE more than anything else, and you want to see that kind of be a part of the player versus player experience. You know, I really do hesitate to look at Gambit and say, oh, it's just a part of the PvP, because it's not. It's even going to be launched into Forsaken as its own separate mode, and I think that's the big thing here, is like, how far away can we get from this just being another mode in the rotation of many modes in PvP, and how close can we get to the point of, like, this is something new. This is something new. This is a driving, possibly a selling point for the future of the Titanfall franchise. I think when we talk about boosting accessibility for Titanfall outside of the other design decisions that can be made, it's this sort of thing that can have really great mass appeal, that can help individuals cope with the skill gap that might exist in a game, while still allowing a game to have that skill gap, to have players feel like there's something to chase in the high end of skill, but to have players who sit on the average or lower end feeling they can get in and have a good time because, oh, hey, look at this mode, it's actually PvE focused. I'm just going to get out there and help my team farm some AI, and then I'll let someone else on my team do the PvP dirty work for me. Gambit sounds really exciting. I can't wait to play it, and maybe we'll revisit a discussion around Gambit itself in the future. But again, I wanted to draw this connection to Titanfall 3 and Bounty Hunt specifically, because if you guys don't know me, if you haven't been watching since the early days of Titanfall on this channel, I was a huge advocate for Bounty Hunt. You know, even with all of its issues, I felt like it was a mode that functioned well, but I think much like a lot of things in Titanfall 2, there's a lot left up to the player. It's kind of just something Respawn did with Titanfall 2, just the side effect of their way they designed the game, where so much is left up to the player base to like work the rest out, that eventually you just end up with a game mode that isn't really playable anymore. I mean, you've got people holding on to cash and not banking just so they can get kills. Whenever you see something like that in a game mode, there's some serious flaws there. No one is really getting the proper fun factor out of that game mode. It's just people farming for kills, people who don't know what the hell's going on, and it devolved into a bit of a disaster. So if you have any ideas for how a PvE, PvP hybrid mode for something like Bounty Hunt could work, you'd like to brainstorm on that a little bit, come back in a couple days and share your thoughts with me down in the comment section below. Let me know. And in general, how do you feel about those sorts of modes? I'm not saying the end all be all. I'm not saying Titanfall 3 throws away the concept of attrition or more straight up PvP competitive modes. I think it's important to have variety, but imagine if the experience of Titanfall 3 could be scaled down a bit and not have 20 modes that no one's playing, and have a focused experience across the campaign, a Gambit style mode, and then the traditional PvP with its quick play and its ranked options. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Shoutouts to my buddy Jack for always helping me come up with great discussion pieces. Him and I we work well like that. He just thinks about things I don't typically think about, and I think about things he doesn't typically think about, so we blend together really well. This video wouldn't have been possible without him. I'll see you in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose, the most important task of your lives.